Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 14th post-cabinet press briefing of May 2026. Allow me to invite our chairperson of this session, Minister Mswere, to present today's cabinet highlights. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chief Secretary Dr. Martin Rushwa, members of the 4th Estate, fellow Zimbabweans. Today, His Excellency the President, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, chaired the 14th Cabinet meeting, and the following issues, among others, were considered and approved. Cabinet noted and approved an update on the 2025-2026 summer crops marketing and the 2026 winter production plan and insights into the agricultural impacts of El Nino from 1980 to 2024, which was presented by the Minister of Agriculture, Mechanization and Water Resources Development, Honorable Dr. Anxious Jongwe Masuda. Based on the second round of Crops, Livestock and Fisheries Assessment Report, Cabinet noted with satisfaction that the food security outlook for the country is generally positive. The projections indicate that Zimbabwe stands to realize a surplus strategic grain reserve ranging between 550,945 metric tons and 964,000 metric tons. Currently, government stocks held at the Grain Marketing Board as at the 6th of May 2026 stand at 155,210 metric tons, comprising maize 36,593 metric tons, white sorghum 1,614 metric tons, red sorghum 13,000 metric tons, pearl millet and rapoko 1,195 metric tons, strategic grain wheat 102,740 metric tons. Additionally, the Grain Marketing Board also holds a total of 62,165 metric tons, being third-party grain stocks for off-take companies. As at the 11th of May 2026, the Grain Marketing Board had settled over 95% of its obligations for grain purchases. Regarding the 2026-2025 summer crops marketing, a total of 41,584 metric tons of crops comprising maize, soybean, sorghum and sunflower had been formally marketed, compared to 21,610 metric tons marketed at the same time in 2025. It is noteworthy that the Grain Marketing Board holds 7.64% of the intake, compared to the 3.81% in the year 2025. Concerning marketing arrangements, the Grain Marketing Board will aggregate grain from farmers comprising strategic grain reserves and private players through its 1,804 collection points and 89 depots. The Grain Marketing Board will also store grain on behalf of clients in order to provide a convenient and cost-effective solution. Furthermore, the Grain Marketing Board will introduce an in-transit grain storage facility to enhance grain imports and supply chains. The actual progress regarding the harvesting of various crops is as follows. A total of 18,000 metric tons of crops were harvested across all provinces, with Mashonaland West topping the list with 41% of the harvest, followed by Manicaland Province with 195,000 metric tons. A total of 226,000 metric tons of sorghum was harvested across the 8 provinces, with Masvingo Province leading the list with 58,995 metric tons, and a total of 70,733 metric tons of soybean was harvested, with Mashonaland West recording the highest figures of 42,372 metric tons. As at day 42, a total of 203.88 million kilograms of tobacco had been sold at an average price of United States dollars 2.59 per kilogram. This represents a 35% increase in volume and a 24% decline in average price compared to the same period in the year 2025. Regarding cotton, plans are underway to revive the cotton production through a value chain approach and accelerated industrialization, buttressed by the Corporate Rescue Initiative. Regarding the winter cereals production, a total area earmarked for winter wheat is 125,000 hectares, of which 23,595 hectares has been planted, being 54.6% above the area planted in the year 2025. Cabinet also noted that El Nino events have become more frequent, with variables but consistently negative impacting on crops, livestock, and water resources. Accordingly, the following mitigation and adaptation measures were adopted. The implementation of an enhanced strategic grain reserve purchase system based on lessons from the West route in living memory in year 2024. The use of new artificial intelligence powered silos for enhanced strategic grain reserves through strategic purchases. Acceleration of climate smart agriculture interventions, sustained presidential input program collection modalities, strengthened early warning and advisory systems, enhanced farmer education and extension services capacity, and continued focus on irrigation development. Cabinet also noted and approved the update on the food deficit mitigation program as presented by the Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Honorable Edgar Moyo. Following Cabinet approval in terms of the food deficit mitigation program, response plan for October 2025 to March 2026 on the 26th of November 2025. The distributions have been concluded across the country, with 77.53% of the targeted 1,293,000 households having been covered and provided with the requisite grain and food assistance. Meanwhile, the second crop, livestock and fisheries assessment of 2026 indicates that Beitbridge, Boera and Chile districts are currently cereal insecure, whilst Mutare, Uzumba, Maramba, Pungu and Berengwa districts will require assistance from October 2025. The current focus now is on responding to distress calls on a case-by-case basis, commencing in June 2026. In terms of provincial distribution disaggregation, the nation is informed that Manicaland Province covered 59.8% distribution across 3 districts, namely Chipinge, Mutare and Buera, whilst Mashonaland Central covered 87.08% for Bindura, Guruve and Mount Darwin, and also Mbire districts. Mashonaland East covered 58.91% for Goromonzi, Wedza, Mudzi, Mutoko, Uzumba, Maramba, Pungwe, and Mashonaland West Province covered 94.41%. Although communities in Urungu and Rimba districts faced challenges in mobilizing resources for transportation of grain. Mashingo Province managed to cover 63.52%, whilst Matabeleland North Province covered 90.61%. Matabeleland South Province covered 79.15%, whilst the Midlands Province covered 79.98%. In line with the Second Republic's ethos of working with all stakeholders, the government of Zimbabwe advises that during the peak hunger period for 2025-2026, the World Food Programme and its implementing partner, the World Vision, continue to complement government efforts in the majority of districts, including the following: Bulilima, Kariba, Berengwa, and Mwenezi districts. Cabinet also received a report in terms of the approved feedback report on the implementation of the job evaluation exercise and the new remuneration framework for 2026 as presented by the Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare, Honorable Ed Kamoyo. In order to address anomalies in the just concluded job evaluation and grading system within the public service, an appeals mechanism encompassing a job evaluation appeals committee will be activated to address individual specific grading and hierarchical anomalies across all public institutions in Zimbabwe. Simultaneously, ministries, departments, and agencies' concerns will be addressed through formal engagements, which also includes submission of written concerns, which will be finalized by the 31st of May 2026. In addition, a stakeholder workshop comprising workers' representatives, ministries, departments, and agencies will be held in due course in order to iron out all issues emanating from the job evaluation implementation process. Cabinet also considered and approved the review on the 2026 Independence celebrations in the Children's Party as presented by the acting chairman of the Cabinet Committee on State Occasions and National Monuments, Honorable Daniel Garo. Cabinet is pleased that the 2026 Independence celebrations were a resounding success, characterized by a huge public turnout and a delivery of high standard infrastructure, owing to the whole of government approach adopted in the preparations under the coordination of the Cabinet Committee. The main celebrations at Mapisa town were attended by an estimated 55,000 Zimbabweans. The Children's Party was presided over by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, and the First Lady, Dr. A. Mnangagwa, on the 17th of April 2026, and was also a resounding success. A new high-standard stadium was successfully constructed in Mapisa town to host the independence celebrations. The facility was designed to meet international standards, including the Confederation of African Football pitch with underground drainage and modern changing rooms for players and officials. The arena features 5 ablution facilities and permanent seats for 10,000 people, alongside specially constructed parking space for both VVIP and VIP dignitaries. This project significantly enhanced the framework in terms of Mapisa town and also stands as proud testimony to the Second Republic's mantra of leaving no one and no place behind. The significant component of the preparations involved the execution of legacy projects as follows: the construction of the new Mapisa Stadium, which is 98% complete, the delivery of equipment for the JMN Como Polytechnic Economics Block, whose superstructure was completed, the completion of the NCISA registry, which is 98% complete, the upgrading of the Maheche Primary School, 98% complete, the construction of 40 science laboratories, which are at 85% in terms of completion, and the upgrading of the Minda High School, which is 92% complete. The upgrading of the Shashane Adventist High School, 100% complete. The upgrading of the Kezi Primary School, 100% complete. The construction of the Isizinda Cultural Center, 85% complete. And the construction of the JMN Como Youth Service and Vocational Training Center, which is at 66% in terms of completion. The construction of roundabouts is 100% complete, and the construction and rehabilitation of the Mapisa Police Station, 55% in terms of completion. The construction and rehabilitation of Kezi Police Station, 92%, and the completion of the Kezi Rural Health Center. The construction and rehabilitation of the Mapisa Hospital is 100% complete. The rehabilitation of 34 government pool properties in Mapisa, 100% complete. The Bite Bridge Civil Servants Housing Development Projects, the 12 units under construction are at 98% in terms of completion. The construction of 3 houses for war veterans, 100% complete. The ICT equipment distribution, 76% complete. And the construction and rehabilitation of the Kezi Aerodrome, 95% complete. The hosting of the 2026 Children's Party at Maheche Primary and Secondary Schools serves as a catalyst for major infrastructure uplift of schools. The government of Zimbabwe successfully delivered 3 classroom blocks, an administration office, an early childhood development block, and 3 staff houses, ensuring a lasting legacy for the local community. Other significant milestones included the commissioning of a modern computer laboratory by His Excellency the President, Dr. Idris Mnangagwa, and the completion of a fully equipped science laboratory at Macheke Secondary School. Going forward, and in line with the already announced next venue selection criteria and devolution agenda, Masvingo Province will host the 2027 47th Independence Anniversary celebrations. The subsequent independence celebrations hosting sequence will be as follows. For Masvingo Province in the year 2027, Matabeleland North in 2028, Mashonaland East in 2029, Mashonaland West Province in 2030, Harare Metropolitan Province in 2031, Bulawayo Metropolitan Province in 2032, Mashonaland Central Province in 2033, Manicaland Province in 2034, and Midlands Province in 2035. Cabinet considered and approved the hosting of the African Union Africa Skills Week as presented by the Minister of Skills, Audit and Development, Honorable Dr. Jennifer Muswere. The Africa Skills Week is the premier continental platform established by the African Union Commission to advance policy, dialogue, partnerships, and innovation in technical and vocational education and training, as well as skills development, under the theme Skills for Resilient and Competitive African Industries, from training to value creation. The event will align with Zimbabwe's National Development Strategy 2, focusing on human capital development, as a catalyst for industrialization. The hosting of the African Union event provides Zimbabwe with an opportunity in terms of global visibility, showcasing the nation as a knowledge hub for innovative skills development and governance. The event fulfills Zimbabwe's statutory obligations to contribute to the African Union's Agenda 2063 and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by advancing inclusive growth, youth empowerment, and decent job creation through high-quality technical vocational education and training. The event will boost the local hospitality and tourism sectors. Cabinet also received reports on progress in the implementation of priority projects for the first 100-day cycle of 2026 as presented by the Ministers of Veterans of the Liberation Struggle Affairs and the Minister of Mines and Mining Development. In terms of social protection, the thematic area in terms of NDS2, the Minister of the Veterans of the Liberation Struggle, Honorable Monica Mavunga, highlighted the following: the implementation of the Veterans Memorial Hospital, which is now 30% complete, the operationalization of the cow photographic safari, which is also 30% complete, the establishment of the Veterans Microfinance Bank, which is at 20% in terms of completion, and the implementation of the Veterans Skills Training, which is on course, and the implementation of a Veterans Livestock Person Scheme, which is also on course. In terms of inclusive economic growth and structural transformation, the Minister of Mines and Mining Development, Honorable Dr. Polite Kabamura, highlighted the following projects: the establishment of an online mineral export permit system, which is now 96% complete, the implementation of 5 Miles Industrial Park, the second phase expansion power plant and cement plant expansion in Mantebeland North Wange district, which is on course in terms of the second phase. The implementation of the Dearborn Mines tungsten processing plant in Chirezi, Mashingo province, which is on course in terms of completion. The implementation of the Palm River Energy Metallurgical Special Economic Zone second phase expansion project in Beitbridge, Matabeleland South, which is 90% in terms of completion. And the establishment of gold service centers in Berengwa, Midlands Province, which is also on course. The establishment of the Empress Mine Gold Processing Plant in Mashava, Mashingo Province is also on course. And the implementation of the Prospect Lithium Zimbabwe Lithium Sulfate Plant in Goromonzi, Mashonaland East Province, where the installation of the plant has been completed. Cabinet also noted and considered the report on the visit undertaken by the Special Envoy of His Excellency, the President, Dr. Idi Mnangagwa. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Professor Emon Muruira, was assigned to go to Central and Eastern countries, namely Albania, Romania, the Republic of Serbia, Bosnia, and many other countries in the East from the 29th of April to the 8th of May is presented. This report was presented by the Acting Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Trade, Honorable Dr. F.M. Shara. The purpose of the outreach was to fulfill the foreign policy pillar in terms of promoting a peaceful and secure international environment for Zimbabwe's development through canvassing for support for Zimbabwe's candidature for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council for the period 2027 to 2028. The elections will be held in June 2026. All the countries affirmed their full support for Zimbabwe's candidature for a non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council for the 2027-2028 term. The countries visited agreed to strengthen bilateral relations through establishment of structured frameworks of cooperation in the form of joint permanent cooperation commissions. The visit also provided an opportunity to promote trade and economic cooperation through Zimbabwe's participation at the Serbia Expo 27 and other fairs in the region, as well as the commitment by the countries to participate at the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair and the Mine Entra. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for presenting.
Thank you, Chief Secretary Dr. Martin Ruswara. Thank you, members of the fourth estate, for the questions. The first, the third, the fourth questions relate to Honorable Dr. Anxious Masuka. The first one being the pricing modalities at the auction floors, which are very low. The second question on debt settling, which is now at 95%. When will that be finalized? And also the resuscitation of the cotton sector. Over to you, Dr. Masuka.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the three questions are very important questions. Let me start with the easy of the three. That will be outstanding 5% when that will be paid. I assume it has been paid by now. I will check later today because we have received the resources to be able to pay farmers. And not just outstanding obligations from prior season, but also for the deliveries that have come through this season, 4,383 metric tons. Yesterday I saw the GMB report that they received 44 metric tons, and that was the portion of the outstanding amount, but I believe today that could have been paid already. Then the second one relates to tobacco. Clearly, the government is not happy, dissatisfied, just as growers are, with the prices that are obtaining on the auction floors, which is why I've made some visits to the auction floors and the contract marketing floors to try and understand the causes and drivers of this very insalubrious situation. I also plan to visit later this week to engage with the stakeholders further, with a very broad meeting with all the stakeholders, growers and merchants, to understand what could be going on in the country. And so the local production is projected to increase to 378 million to 410 million kilograms, up from the 355 million kilograms we produced last year. The average price is currently $2.59 compared to about $3.42 last year. So about a 24% reduction in the price, but a 35% increase in the volumes that have been delivered. We've noted the characteristics, trying to analyze whether it's simply a glut in terms of the volumes that have come onto the market, that the market might be saturated. But we did a grade by grade analysis as of day 42, when the 203 million or 204 million kilograms have been sold. We saw that if you look at leaf, lag, and lamina, if you look at leaf, lag, and primings, the leaf comparative prices from about 2010 to now are almost similar, but there is very heavy discounting for the lower reapings, but also a massive difference in terms of pricing for the auction and the contract auction. I think is currently at $1.93 compared to about $2.64 at contract. And we are investigating these causes, whether it's just the principal buyers, the surrogates, and certain patterns that are happening. You will recall that TIMB, the Regulator Tobacco Industry Marketing Board, had to suspend one buyer last week on account of perceived prejudicial performances within the buying line. And we are investigating any and every suspicion that could be prejudicing farmers. In the region, as you know, the other flu-cured growing countries are Zambia, Tanzania, and to a very limited extent, Malawi predominantly produces 95% barley tobacco. So Tanzania and Zambia, there is about a 28-30% reduction in the price in Zambia. We are looking for the Tanzania figures because they just recently opened their floors, but the reports also indicate of very sluggish prices there. The other competitor at the international level and in the same hemisphere, southern hemisphere, is Brazil, where they produce about almost 1.5 times to 2 times our crop. Then they have some styles that are very similar to what we produce. We note that their prices there are 15 to 20% down. So what it means is that the global supply has moved faster than global consumption, and the stock levels have begun to build up, and we see this reflected in the downward pricing and payment for farmers. That is not comfort for anyone, certainly not comfort for farmers. So government has intervened in the following way. First, that the afforestation levy, which is levied on every grower and being 0.75% of the value of the crop, be levied on only those farmers that use firewood, so that we can encourage our farmers to not use firewood. Then the second aspect was that we look at the corporate social responsibility levy, which is the 2% core levy, and with a view to suspending that so that we can enhance viability. The third aspect was that we investigate the establishment of a stabilization fund. And this stabilization fund, we are looking at the modalities of establishing that from both the growers levy and the merchant levy, to say perhaps above a crop size of 300 million kilograms, we must put a certain amount into an escrow account and begin to mobilize the resources to assist farmers to transit to systems that would enable them to produce higher yields at a lower cost in order to enhance profitability, viability, and sustainability, but also to look at how else we can intervene in the value chain. We said that in terms of the tobacco transformation plan, we needed to attend to value addition and beneficiation. And this just highlights the agents of ensuring that we value add into cigarettes and beyond cut run. So we find an additional channel for our tobaccos, in addition, of course, to making forays into the international market to try and get additional markets for our tobacco. So we continue to watch the situation, and we hope that the merchants will appreciate the qualities that are being brought. And going forward, of course, our focus must be producing flavor styles of tobacco, because we see that there is literally an insatiable demand for that. That's tobacco. Then regarding cotton at peak in 2012, we produced 350,000 metric tons. And at our lowest, we produced 28,000 metric tons. And this year, we projected that we are going to produce 67,000 metric tons. So this yo-yo type growth in the industries that we are trying to eliminate by intervening at various levels. First, it is the approach to adopt a value chain approach, and also that cotton must cause rural industrialization for the attainment of Vision 2030. So that value chain approach looks at all the nodes in the value chain and say that the value chain is as strong as its weakest point. So the current weakest point in the value chain is these unviable and unsustainable prices that are being paid to cotton farmers. For example, last year, grade D was paid at 32 cents per kg. There's a 9% increase to 35 cents per kg for grade D. But we need now the merchants, together with COTCO, to come with a package to be able to support farmers so that they can enhance their yields beyond the 300, 500 kgs per hectare that they are currently getting, so that cotton growing can become viable again. But we also need to have value addition and beneficiation. Currently, the model in many growing areas is that cotton is transported for over very long distances to the ginning point, so leaving the communities. Government's plan is to ensure that that aggregation takes place in the growing areas, and that you have mini ginneries there, and that they are linked to oil expression plants, and that is what we want to do in Kokwe, we want to do in Checheche, we want to do in Mzarabani, so that these proof of concept models are replicated to ensure that there is viability. But specifically for Kotko, Kotko has gone under voluntary corporate rescue in order to protect its assets to enable it to serve growers better. And the corporate rescue practitioner, Grant Thorndon, will be able to provide additional details. But the cotton marketing season will commence in earnest next week, and we look forward to monitoring that very closely, and while ensuring that we work with all the industry stakeholders. And I have had a meeting with them. They are all enthusiastic. They hope that we'll be able to build on what we've done this season to be able to build a stronger, a better and vibrant and robustly good cotton industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Anchas Masuka. The last question is to the Minister of Public Service, Honorable Moyo, on job evaluation shortcomings. Over to you, Minister Moyo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of this session. I also want to thank the journalist who asked that question. Now, basically, concerns that are coming out are twofold. Yes, there are others, but these two seem to be very prominent. One is that in some cases there's been a net effect of the reduction of the net salary of members. Then the other thing is that we see a situation where some senior people who are in supervisory positions are beginning to earn less than people in less than those that they are supervising. Now, this is being investigated, and we have set up an appeals committee, and we've also requested that ministries, departments, and agencies write to the Public Service Commission detailing their observations of what they see happening. But then I want to also say that in some cases where DSIs, for example, are now earning less than school heads, some of the reasons are that there are some allowances that are given to the heads which may not necessarily be given to DSIs. But then this is being addressed because we believe that then DSIs must be moved from D3 to D4 so that we restore and recognize their supervisory authority. So that's one way this is going to be done. And then there are also these hierarchical concerns where in some cases it is being felt that people were wrongly placed. So it is here that you are saying that ministries, departments, and agencies will have to write to the Public Service Commission detailing those observations. And in addition to that, in a few days' time, there's going to be a meeting of all the relevant stakeholders so that these issues can be looked at closely and solutions then proffered. But however, we want to also acknowledge that an exercise as big as the job evaluation for the entire public service is bound to have some of these impacts which may not be intended. So we think we need to go deeper. And what has created, in some cases, this problem is the absence of physical payslips, because the payslips are now electronic. So some people have not been able to access the electronic platforms to get their payslips. And we think that in some cases, their deductions might have had an effect on their net pay. So the whole thing is being worked on, and we think we can find solutions in so short a time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the last round. Yes.
Thank you, Chief Secretary. My name is Latu Nyang from Zetan Prime. Okay. Thank you, Chief Secretary. My name is Latu Nyang from Zetan Prime. My first question goes to the Chair, Minister Mswere. Going into AU Skills Week, what are the gaps that seem to address, and what is the state of preparedness? My second question goes to Minister Mavunga. Is there a database, probably to say that we have 20, 50 beneficiaries from these upcoming skills or schemes, and when do you intend to start implementing them? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Takuchi Mbakwe. My first question goes to the Minister of Agriculture. In fact, my question goes to the Minister of Agriculture. Follow up on the tobacco issue. Seeing that we are producing.
Thank you, Chief Secretary Dr. Martin Bushwaya. Thank you, members of the state, for the important questions. We'll start with the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth question to Dr. Anxious Masuka on the fate of farmers, the agricultural outlook, tobacco pricing, and the performance of the marketing season. Over to you, Dr. Anxious Masuka.
I actually got three. One related to this farmers issue, the one related, of course, to the number of food insecure people, in the follow-up question on tobacco. Those are the three that I got.
Yeah.
So I'll attempt to answer. Let me start with the easiest of the three. In that the number of insecure people will be known after the Zimbabwe Livelihoods Assessment Committee report, which I assume is already underway, and they produce a rural livelihoods assessment and also an urban livelihoods assessment, which is why you heard the Minister of Labour, Public Service and Social Welfare saying they will be able to respond to these intermediate aspects. But having said so, the context ought to be right, that what they are measuring is cereal insufficiency, not food insecurity. Because the food basket includes much more than cereals. And so we must be mindful of that. That is why we need to wait for this similar report. Then the second one relates to, let's deal with tobacco. That's why we have the Tobacco Value Chain Transformation Plan 2, which first aims to ensure that as a government we said we wanted to increase tobacco production sustainably and with traceability to 500 million kilograms by 2030. And the discussion we've been having is that have we grown too quickly, have we grown too fast in order to overwhelm our markets? Should we have a structured growth plan? And if so, how would we manage that? But we do have lessons from the past, which is why growers numbers. In the past, we have used to have quota systems for such production. We put in place an industry-wide market intelligence committee to be able to inform us on what the best way forward would be going into 2026, 2027. But we also need to explore value addition and beneficiation and take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in order to be able to get more value for our tobacco. The tobacco that we export, we get 1.2 billion US, perhaps this year, 1.4, 1.5 billion US dollars. Whereas if it is value added cigarettes, it is worth 50, 60 billion US dollars on the international market. So clearly, Zimbabwe must go with the value addition, starting with just enhancing processing capacity so that we are able to process the tobacco as it is sold in season beyond the 280, 300 million processing capacity that we are told the industry has. Then we must go beyond just selling cut tobacco as cut run into beneficiating into cigarettes so that we can get more of the value of our tobacco. Tobacco is generally grown on sandy and sandy loam soils where other crops are not as profitable as tobacco. So tobacco becomes the anchor rotation crop in that rotation. And maize can be grown, soybean, wheat very profitably after tobacco, but ordinarily the anchor rotation crop in any tobacco rotation is tobacco because generally of the historical viability issues. So we must also explore additional markets beyond the traditional markets But at grower level, we must focus on producing quality. Ordinarily, 40 to 60% is leaf, and if it is good leaf, and Zimbabwe is historically known for producing flavor styles of tobacco. So that is what we must focus on. Our tobacco presentation at the auction floors is also an issue where we must improve the grading and everything else so that our presentation is better, so that we can get more of the value of our crop. So if we put all this together, I think the ingredients for a very successful industry are in place, and time will tell. Now to this confused reporting by journalists relating to what I said in Parliament as acting leader of government business, and in the absence of the Minister of Lands and Rural Development is irrelevant to this meeting. But if you go to the sections of the Constitution, section 289, 293, and 295, it will tell you that it says the government must provide more secure title, which means beyond a permit, beyond a lease, into a title deed. So that is what A1 and A2 farmers are getting. If we go into the Constitution, it says we shall compensate former farm owners, white farmers, for the improvements that they've made on the land. And that is what we are saying, that the improvements that they've made on the land, they must be compensated. But you are aware that there are some white farmers, 409 of them, that remain on their properties. And we are saying, just like Zimbabweans are buying land, they too must buy the land. So that's again in terms of the Constitution. The Constitution says we must pay BIPA farmers for the compensate them for land and for the improvements. And that's what I said. That those unoccupied BIPA farms, they are 67, and that is what the government is considering. I don't know where the confusion arose. And we also then said the president was magnanimous and said the Amatenga African Purchase Area, who accessed these farms before independence, and there are over 10,000 of them. And the president simply said, if you are giving title to the A1s and A2s who got land after independence, how about these Africans who got land before independence? Also give them title. So the confusion in this group called journalists is amazing, is astounding. And please, I beg you, for the sake of progress for Zimbabwe, ensure that you report more accurately. And if you are unable to decipher or to translate, because I was saying this in short, so I thought it was lost in translation, but that it was circulated, the wrong translation, that I mentioned the countries. If you go to the parliamentary clip, there is no mention of a country, but the first thing that is actually out are 4 countries that are mentioned in Europe that we are retaining, that the former president must be retaining in Israel. When the constitution was made under his purview, the former president. And these are the constitutional aspects that the Second Republic is fulfilling. So please familiarize yourselves with the supreme law of the land called the Constitution, and also get periodic updates from the relevant minister. I hope this closes this chapter. I'm patriotic, and one day I'm sure our history will be known. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Inchas Masuka, for the response. The second question is to the Minister of the Veterans of the Liberation Struggle. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank the journalist for the question. As the Minister of Veterans of the Liberation Struggle Affairs, we are mandated to look into the welfare and economic empowerment of the veterans of the liberation struggle. As such, government empower veterans in various economic sectors. Some are in farming, agriculture, some in mining, tourism, etc. As such, these comrades need assistance in running their projects for enterprises productively. Hence, we facilitate their training. Like recently, we facilitated their training in livestock production. Over 500 of them were trained in that. the main purpose is for them to manage their projects and be productive so much they'll be able to look after themselves. As a ministry, we therefore keep a database of all what our comrades do. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mavunga. The other question is to the Minister of Mines and Mining Development on exports of raw minerals. Over to you, Dr. Kambamura.
Thank you, Chairman, Honorable House. Firstly, Cabinet gave a notice in June 2025 that beginning 1 January 2027, no exports for lithium concentrates will be allowed by government. And advised that lithium producers need to build up lithium sulfate plants. After that notice was given by Cabinet, you observed that there was panic in the sector, which led to a lot of unethical business practices or behavior with the lithium producers, which include, among others, under declarations, under invoicing, trading their approved excess export capacities to the middlemen, and some were even shipping out a lot of lithium concentrated stockpiling out of the country, so that by the time which was given by Cabinet, which is January 2027, there will be no more resource to talk of. So on 26 February, we came up with policy intervention where we banned export of lithium concentrate so that the producers will come on the table to discuss and hear the new government expectations. So by then, some producers even approached my office to say, we no longer have a deposit. So what do you want us to do as government? So the export quotas that we introduced were in a way to monitor progress and to make sure that the quantity approved by government was commensurate with plant capacity at those mining locations, to make sure also that there will be no more excess export consignment or export capacity that will be traded to other players who do not own the mines, but they are just middlemen. So the export quotas that we introduced to lithium producers are enough to see them roll on up to a period whereby they will have a set up lithium sulfate plants. We've also put those quotas as a monitoring mechanism whereby we'll be monitoring progress with regard to conditions that they were given by government. Are they implementing those conditions, which include but not limited to setting up separating facilities of other economic materials or minerals within the lithium concentrates? Please note that we did not give export quotas for raw minerals or materials, but the quotas were only for the big 6 large lithium producers only, who were approved to build lithium concentrate facilities by government in between 2020 and 2025. So they made some commitments that come 1 January 2027, they will have built lithium sulfate plants or any other salts, which may include lithium carbonate and so forth. So we'll open up the quotas once we are satisfied with government that they will build enough capacity for value-added or beneficiated lithium salt next year. Thank you.
Is keep okay, thank you, Dr. Engineer Polite Kapamba, for the response. Then I have to respond to the last question on the hosting of the Skills Week, which is an AU event. Yes, we are ready to host the Africa Skills Week in Harare Metropolitan Province from the 12th to the 16th of October 2026 under a theme, Skills for a Resilient and Competitive African Industries from Training to Value Creation. So what is mainly of paramount importance is the human capital development part, which is the key catalyst that is going to drive Africa's industrialization. Some of the sub-themes will be dealing with youth, artificial intelligence, and utilization of skills in relation to natural resources. Zimbabwe has redefined tourism, both tourism and international relations, as we continue to work together with the global community and also in particular the African Union in order to consolidate in terms of our global visibility as a nation. We have everything that it takes for us to be able to host this event. A number of events that we've hosted in the past, which also includes the SADC Summit, many other SADC meetings that have been held, hosted in Harare, and many other cities in Zimbabwe, including also the Transform Africa Summit that we hosted in Victoria Falls. All this is testament to Zimbabwe's vast and wide spectrum of knowledge, experience, and capability to host international events with all the platforms and expertise in logistics and protocol for us to be able to host the Africa Skills Week here in Harare Metropolitan Province. Then, yes, skills audits are taking place with the first one having been conducted in the agricultural sector. The first report was also presented, I'm sure, in 2025, and the health one was also presented. But we are now making it more comprehensive by enhancing and including many other aspects that also include both downstream and upstream industrial sectors related to the particular skill. And there's a huge deficit in terms of our skills, ranging from between 70 to 90%, especially in areas in health sciences, engineering, and many other technical areas. And why did we ensure that we are now ensuring that this is comprehensive from the ministry, from the sector, from the industry, all the way to the particular society? This is mainly because in our nation, we still need to upskill and ensure that the electrical engineers that we produce at our universities are able to generate power, not only to maintain the power. The same applies in terms of health sciences, in the pharmaceutical areas, that the import bioanalysis that we have conducted as we have enhanced the skills audit analysis and development should ensure that we cut down on the importation of medicines, we cut down a lot on the pharmaceuticals, we also cut down in terms of machinery. We are upskilling, and also the revision of the curriculum also includes institutions of higher and tertiary education, where we should be able to produce engineers, mechanical engineers that can produce machines. The same also applies with the expansion and analysis in terms of power generation. We were also looking at skills, including in nuclear energy. So skills audits will continue, and I've already highlighted the deficit in terms of numbers. With the huge resources in terms of solar energy, hydro, and coal resources, we should be able to produce most of our engineers, having the capacity for us to be also able to export a lot of our energy. So mainly this will also relate to the import bill analysis that is currently underway in order to identify also the discrepancies in terms of the knowledge and intellectual capacity. And why is the Africa Skills Week important that Zimbabwe is going to lead in terms of leading policy dialogue, partnership, the revision of our education sector as we moved to heritage-based education, the innovation hubs that we continue to expand on, the legislative changes that